What if you just tripped over that cord?
Oh, I worried about tripping over that cord like the whole night.
Did you do it?
Okay.
Did you even do it?
Do I? What?
Did you go live?
Yeah. Are we not live? Okay. I hope we are. Well, there we are.
Oh my god.
There we are. Yeah, get that foot out of there.
Jeez, I should have put socks on.
Although, I don't think this is the time to talk about this, but man, stuff I hear about people wanting people to send them things about their feet. That's a thing, right?
There's someone I can tell you about that was like that, and I will tell you one day.
Okay, someday. I mean, as
You can probably guess.
I don't know if I could, but I will tell you, the licensed marriage family therapist in me, it is not an uncommon thing that I have people who bring that up. Yeah, we could talk about that sometime too. Okay, so I got to stay in the frame here as well. Hey, everybody.
Yeah, you're far, far away.
Far,
What's
far
in your
away.
Jug?
Water?
Oh.
What'd you think?
I don't know, I'm just asking.
No, I mean, it could have been like energy drink and stuff, right? But it's 2 Propels, 1...
Berry water?
Berry water. Kiwi strawberry, 1 berry, shaken, not stirred, with pebble ice.
Gotcha.
That's my drink of choice. Mackie Overbay. Thank you for joining me for this live question and answer where licensed marriage and family therapist, licensed cosmetologist, and esthetician, we're here to answer your relationship questions. I really enjoy talking about narcissistic traits and tendencies, behaviors, emotional immaturity. We can talk about relationships. Although I'm not your therapist. I have to say that. This is
It's your little disclaimer.
Yeah, this is just
you're just a guy
just some
who knows
thoughts,
some things.
who knows some things. 20 years as a licensed marriage and family therapist has taught me a thing or two about a thing or two.
A thing or two.
Yeah,
Great.
that's like an old man line. I'm realizing I'm doing more and more of those old man lines than ever before. Here's our warm-up topic. Well, people come on and you can ask anything at all, please. People ask your questions and we are going to answer them. I am determined to answer your questions. We're talking right here. Not your therapist, but a guy giving you advice who happens to be a therapist. But I learned, this is where I'm going to show my age, Mackie. Do you know what a pick-me girl is?
Yes.
Okay, I love
How does that show your age?
Because I'm just learning about it. Yeah.
I thought you were saying you knew that from back in your day.
Oh,
and I was
no,
like,
there was no such
you're
thing.
ahead of your
But
time.
so I want to put these pieces together. So first of all, tell me what that is. And I'm not trying to nuh-uh. Okay, so what is that?
A pick-me girl is someone that basically just every single thing they do or say is to get attention on them.
Okay. So I want to tie.
Ditzy.
Does it have to be ditzy, or what if it's brilliant?
It doesn't have to be. Yeah. But it's usually that they play dumb, kind of. They do that
Okay. Could there be a pick me guy? Is that a thing? Are they called anything different?
I don't know. I feel like people don't really say that, but technically speaking.
Sure. Okay, so here's the thing. A long time ago, I worked with a woman who she was going through relationship after relationship, and she said, and I will never forget this, she said, I'm really good at getting guys to like me. And she said, if I date a cowboy guy, then I've got the boots and the hat, and I've got to go to...
There's a Parks and Rec episode about this.
Is it really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What is it?
You know Anne?
Yeah.
She does that. She dates she's dating a ton of guys, and she literally dresses a cowgirl, gets pink in her hair, gets
Yeah, that's not
all
good.
Things. No.
No.
And that's the whole point of the episode.
Okay, well, but I think it's fascinating though, because here's where it comes into my world, in the therapy world. So I'm trying to help people find out who they are. We want them to have a strong sense of self. And how do you find out who you are? You have to try things. You have to go through experiences. But if you think that the whole goal of the game is just to get the other person, then I have people that basically say, but no, that is who I am. I am very good at this. So they're trying to come in and say that is who they are. Who am I to change this person? But yet they're seeing me as a therapist saying, why do I keep losing relationships? And I might be overstating this or overgeneralizing, but when the person doesn't know who they are, then they're saying, okay, I can figure out how I can show up so that you think I'm this person that you like.
And it's how long can you fake
How long can you fake it? Yeah.
Done.
Because if this person is...
And they're done that.
Okay, have you? I was going to ask.
Well, I feel like when I was
younger?
17, 18, 19.
Yeah.
It totally was, how do I change myself?
Oh, somebody said, can I ask a question? Please do ask a question.
Yeah, just comment on
so,
it.
Okay, so
But 100%. And we've talked about this before, where it's if somebody said, have you seen this movie?
Yes.
The answer would just be, yeah, duh. Of course. Or do you like this kind of music? Yeah, duh. When it's no, I haven't.
No.
But I don't want you to think I'm not good enough or not whatever.
Yeah.
And now, if I haven't seen something, I just go, no.
No. And then we all saw the movie Sinners, which has like great reviews.
Great reviews, and I said I don't get it.
I know we came out of there and
I still don't get it.
And I loved it. I really did. I thought it was really good.
I liked it. I just didn't.
I don't
get the hype.
But that's even a good example though. That is a movie though. It's a muse. It's something that I see and it makes me think things and feel things and wonder things. Mm-hmm. And you're doing the same thing, I would imagine. And so then our experiences don't have to be the same.
Yeah.
But I like that.
We're still friends.
Yeah, we are. Practically related. Right?
Practically.
Okay, let's get your questions. What do we got? Okay.
I think we have half of the questions so far.
This is not good TV with us both just staring down. Okay, do you want to... I'll try to pull them up on here too, but what do you got?
I have half a question.
Oh, okay. Well, give me the half and I can give half an answer.
Patient.
Okay. Did you hear that though? That's a dad joke. Did you hear what I said?
No. I tune out your dad jokes at this point.
Okay. How dare you, number one. But I said, give me half the question and I'll give him half an answer.
Oh,
that's not bad. Okay.
Okay. I'm a therapy patient. Borderline personality disorder, depression, and anxiety. I'm feeling like the BPD is the most painful. Is DBT and medication the only hope?
Oh, that's a great question. So we got a lot of acronyms flying around there, right? So BPD is borderline personality disorder.
Okay.
And a lot of times people get BPD, they think that's bipolar because there's some similar initials in there. Big difference, bipolar versus borderline personality disorder. Borderline personality disorder is in this cluster of personality disorders that features such hits as narcissism, histrionic, antisocial, borderline.
What is histrionic?
Histrionic, it's interesting.
Never heard that in my life.
Well, when I was studying for my exam, my boards, my licensing exam, histrionic, they would always give a sample question that was more about somebody that it had more. I gotta not get the shadow band thing. What do people say? Segs around, overly flirtatious, and it involves trying to convince someone to join you in an intimate relationship in order to get your needs met. So now the siren song of the borderline is "I hate you, don't leave me." Mm. So it's like this just dramatic push and pull, and then you've got the narcissist that is grandiose, malicious, lacks sympathy. But all these are in this personality disorder cluster. And the most fascinating thing, this is why I think this will play into this question. The most fascinating thing about a personality disorder is it is saying that this is who you are. This is your personality. So even if you get if you go to therapy and somebody says, okay, here's normal, I'll air quote that. But then if you are then saying, okay, it kind of goes back to the pick me thing we were talking about. Tell me what I need to do, or tell me how I need to act so that I will be viewed as normal in this relationship or in this job. But if at your core, at your character, you don't really understand, I don't even know why I'm doing this, because to me, I don't think that I'm doing anything that wrong. It's like you guys all don't get it. But okay, fine, tell me. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Yeah, so it's a trip because it's like it is your core personality. Now disorder sounds a little mean.
Well, yeah, then that makes it seem rude.
I mean, it is. Offended. So then their question is medication and DBT is a type of therapy called dialectical behavioral therapy, and it is. And I want to be so honest. The types of therapy modalities that I know well, like acceptance and commitment therapy. I can do cognitive behavioral therapy. There's some others, in the couples world. I like emotionally focused therapy. I like differentiation, but dialectical behavioral therapy or DBT, I don't know enough about. But
do you know what it's like closest?
Yeah, I mean, so it has like a mindfulness component, but also a behavioral component. So I know that when I've over generalized it for somebody before, that it's kind of saying, hey, we're really not gonna go with your manipulation, your exaggeration, your grandiosity, those sort of things. So that's the part where it's like, so can I just get you to come back to this present moment? And then trust me, let me teach you the correct way to behave in this situation. But then the hope is that as you learn that, you're trying to integrate it internally to change your character or who you are. But I do have, hang on though. This is I do have a document that I think would be, let me see if I can find it. Okay, because I think it would be good to just throw this out there of DBT. So we've got skill. So DBT, it combines cognitive behavioral therapy with mindfulness practices and emphasizes the balance between acceptance and change. So I'm a big fan of acceptance and improvement therapy, and that's just saying, hey, right now, accept the fact that this is how you're thinking, this is how you're feeling, but you also have a component of that that's saying, and it's not really working well in your relationships. So that's a big part of, I mean, that's hard for somebody that is saying, but you guys are all wrong and I think I'm right. But then that mindfulness practice, it kind of does bring you back into this presence and with some acceptance. And then what do we have to do to change? So it has training in mindfulness, distress tolerance. So trying to deal with your discomfort, emotional regulation, and then basically the old Dr. Phil adage of, and how's that working for you? The way that you're showing up in your relationships. But DBT, usually it's pretty intensive. I've had a couple of clients that have gone to, it's not necessarily inpatient treatment, but it's a pretty rigid outpatient kind of treatment where you do certain things every day and you're logging skills and that sort of thing. So I don't, look at that, I'm saying I don't know enough about DBT, but it's definitely something to look into. So back to their question. Yeah, DBT is considered
and medication.
To be, so medication, yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, if you, if you're the way you're interacting with others causes you a great deal of anxiety, and then when you have anxiety, your heart rate elevates, your amygdala gets hijacked, and then you end up being very reactionary, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. But then when you're angry and you're flooded, you're being really mean, then you're going to try to maybe work on your anxiety, or you might need an antidepressant that's going to flatten out your affect a little bit, and it's that thing so you can access the tools that you need. But did we get the second part? Is that the
only hope?
Oh, great point. So I work a lot with the world of, I won't say personality disorders, because this is for anybody new, my big platform. Go check out my podcast, Waking Up to Narcissism, for example. And the number of people, or percentage of people that would be actually diagnosed as narcissistic personality disorder, or maybe even borderline personality disorder, it's relatively small. Depending on the study, you look at 2 to 5, 6%. So I typically say that if you are actually a diagnosed narcissist, you're not going to therapy. So the person here that's saying, hey, I'm diagnosed as borderline, and so I'm in therapy, and I'm just curious what will help. So again, this is why I'm not your therapist, but to me, I always say that if you're asking the questions and you're tuning into a therapist, and trying to find out the answers, and you're going to therapy, then I would guess that it's most likely not a personality disorder, but it's more extreme emotional immaturity. And that's what I kind of hang my hat on. That the number of people that have personality disorders is relatively small for how much we throw it around. I mean, right? We go back to, everybody's ex was narcissistic, or everybody's ex-girlfriend was borderline, or that sort of thing. Yeah. And that one's an easy one, just to throw that diagnosis. And what's even worse about that is if somebody in the relationship says, hey, I think you have borderline personality disorder. Number one, the answers are going to show immaturity. No, I don't. You do. Or, that kind of thing. Yeah. But then it's unfair, because now that person is like, oh my gosh, do I have borderline? Now I got to go figure out, do I? I'm going to go see a therapist, and I'm going to read books about it. So if you're the person that took that advice or took that suggestion or that criticism, and now you're trying to figure it out, I would guess it's more along the lines of you're probably more on the emotional immature category and not a personality disorder.
So there's lots of hope.
There's a lot of hope,
there's lots of things to be done.
Yeah, so it's, and there's like 2 thoughts on this. I'd love for you to jump in at any point. So in one, you're going down, you're getting treatment for DBT, and you're taking medication, and if you feel like you are starting to change and the other person is saying, I don't know still, that might be an answer right there. Can that person just easily dismiss you with I think you're still the same? Mm-hmm. And that's where I start talking about learn about differentiation, where that is ultimately you are the one who knows you best. And I love to help get my clients this place where they have this 90% solid, maybe 10% flexible sense of self. So if you know who you are, and you know that the way you're thinking and feeling is actually, it's okay, but that other person has a problem with it, maybe that's the additional work to bring to your therapist of saying, it really is saying, am I was going to say, am I crazy? That's a loaded word, but this is what's showing up in my relationship. And is the other person actually being pretty reactionary? Are they being pretty emotionally immature? Are they engaging in all or nothing black or white thinking?
I don't know. Are they?
I don't know either. Well, yeah. Okay. Other questions? Or do they give us more?
No, but this one's interesting. If you're always treating people, how do you turn it off when meeting new people?
Oh, you don't. You don't.
You're just diagnosing people.
Yeah, totally. I think about this all the time. And I talk to other people that have in their professions. The easiest one to go to is, for some reason, I end up working with a fair amount of dentists. And I say, are you always looking at people's teeth? They're saying, yeah. Of course I am, you know? And so I don't think it's a bad thing though, because the turning it off makes, to me, it's this assumption that it's just this so much to carry with me. And, but I love what I do. So I am trying to diagnose or read people constantly. Like right now, is Mackie so bored? I'm kidding.
Excuse me.
Okay. But no, it's a great question though. But I don't turn it off. But I don't think that it has me then judging people and they're saying, you know, I had a rough day. And I'm like, tell me about your mom.
Yeah, it's not like that. But it
right?
is like your brain is still running.
Yeah, which, and I want to answer all the questions today. But I just did a podcast that I've been working on for so long. And it's about what emotional immaturity looks like in adults. And I'll tell you, maybe we'll just kind of throw one on here a little bit too, where it's that, let me go to one of my favorites, and it's magical thinking. And my whole hypothesis here is, well, and I got this from this therapist named Terry Real that's pretty amazing. People should go look up Terry, but it's the things that were adaptive or they helped us in our childhood become maladaptive and they no longer help us as an adult. So here's the coolest one, magical thinking. Did we talk about, we talked a little bit about this, right?
Yeah.
So we have a little grandson in the house, not we. It's your...
He's my nephew.
My grandson, because you're my daughter. I'm your dad.
Yeah.
And we had Easter, and he had this big old like egg, and so we put it in front of his face. And so what is he thinking right then?
Everything's gone.
He disappeared. Like it was, because then when
alone.
and then when he takes the egg away, we're all like, oh my gosh, there you are. So that's healthy magical thinking. It's kind of age appropriate. Or when you were a kid, did you think that if you left your stuffed animals not like in a good position or something, they'd be sad? Or did you have any of those kind of thoughts?
Hey, I wasn't listening.
Okay.
One more time.
Okay. When you were a kid, did you think if you left the room and your stuffed animals weren't in a nice position on the bed or something, they might be sad or they might...
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Do you still?
No.
Okay. I'm just checking.
25.
I mean, so that's like...
But no, definitely that, yeah.
Yeah, so that's magical thinking. And so then what does it look like as an adult is it's where adults with magical thinking just assume partners should just know what they want without communicating it. So that's one. Well, you should know. Everybody knows.
Right.
That's magical if you think about that. Because how on earth should that person know?
How would they possibly know?
Right?
Think of how many things go through your brain every second of every day.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no way.
No, and then the next part of magical thinking is, or if I ignore it, it will go away. And on this podcast episode, I talked about how much I don't like opening my mail. I'm a 55-year-old professional human being.
Yeah, you have a problem with that.
Well, because if I don't open it, then nothing bad will ever happen. That's magical thinking. It's emotional immaturity, is what I'm saying.
And I kind of do that, and Mom gets on me for it.
Does she?
At night, when I have things in the morning that I don't want to do, I stay up late so that I don't have to go to sleep, because then if I go to sleep, it goes... I used to do this in high school all the time. And Mom would be like, the day's going to come anyways, you might as well go to sleep.
For sure.
And I'd be like, but if I go to sleep right now, it'll be like that. Or I can stay awake, and then it feels longer.
Okay, but that is this magical thinking.
Yeah.
Or the other one is people that don't look at their bank account, because then they just think then that means there's no problems.
That.
Oh, again, maybe similar, maybe currently going through it. And the last thing I'll say, and then I want to jump back to questions, is on this
Kelly's
note.
Here.
Oh, hey Kelly. Good. All right, Kelly. Where I would say, where have you been?
Where have we been?
Yeah. But this magical thinking stuff is wild, because I just want to say, so we go back to when you're a little kid. If I close my eyes, you can't see me, but then you mature out of it, hopefully. But this is because we're supposed to outgrow this magical thinking, because we're supposed to develop this cause and effect relationship with life. So the cause and effect. So I have had to pay more late car registration fees in my life, because I'll get the thing from the DMV and I know it's in there. But if I just put it over here, then I don't even know. That's what's silly about magical thinking. Or even then, it's another version of magical thinking is, or if I don't write it down, I'll remember.
Oh.
Right?
I do that.
Because cause and effect, that has not worked so far, or at all.
That's never worked for the whole time you've been alive, but it still seems like the way to go.
So anyway, I just think that's interesting, and that ties back to when we were talking about things like people that want to know if they're borderline or somebody narcissist, and I talk so much about, I think we're all emotionally immature. When you find out what emotional immaturity looks like, it's mind-blowing, because then you can't unsee it. Even if somebody just says, well, I probably don't even want to try to talk to them because I'm sure it's not going to go well, then I'm doing magical thinking, because I'm saying, okay, if I don't talk about it, it'll be okay. Or I've already said, and it's not going to go well. Black or white, all or nothing. And magical thinking. Now you throw one more in there that I've been really fixated on. It's this emotional reasoning. So kids believe if I feel it, then it must be true. So if I feel like you are mad at me, then you are mad at me. And that's where a kid will say, stop yelling at me, because they feel like you are yelling at them because they feel like they've done something wrong. And at some point, the parent's like, hey, bud, I'm not. And they're like, geez, stop yelling. And then
we have had that interaction when I was little all the time.
When you were little.
Yeah. Hey.
Kidding. But what's fascinating about it is like,
where I'd be like,
because you felt bad.
Out and I'd be like, you're yelling at me, Mom. And it's like, you're not even talking any different. But to me, I'm like, stop yelling.
And what's crazy is that, talk about emotional maturity, then at some point, then if you don't get it, then most parents inevitably say, finally, they're like, I'll show you what is yelling, And then the little kids,
yelled a day
I
in
know.
your life.
Wow, that's very kind.
You really haven't.
But
I've never heard.
I would say, but it's that for good. But then okay, I said one more, but one more, and then I hope there's some questions there. Poor emotional boundaries, because kids merge their identity with their caregiver. It's how we get our sense of self from external validation, and then eventually, for kids, in adults, it means that you start taking responsibility for other people's emotions or feelings, and you make other people responsible for yours. So then, if I say things like, "Well, if you wouldn't have said that, then I wouldn't have had to react this way. I just made that person responsible for my emotions." Or the other one is, and this one I think is interesting. This is one of those you can't unsee, where if I said, well, man, Mackie, we talked about it a little bit today. I almost didn't ask you to come on here tonight because I didn't want you to think you had to, and I didn't want you to feel obligated, and I was worried that you might think.
You didn't even give me the chance
exactly,
to be like, I'm actually fine.
Yeah, because I'm actually managing your emotions in that scenario.
My emotions were just fine.
And then, and you said, yeah, I'd like to do it. I'm like, are you sure? And then at some point, it's like, look, old man, I said I'm sure.
Look, old man.
Okay. All right.
Okay, we have to speed run something.
Okay, good. Well, when you weren't bringing them up, I was thinking, what if nobody's doing?
No.
Okay.
Okay, going off of the one about you, how do you turn it off when meeting new people?
Oh, yeah.
How does that affect your relationships?
Ooh. I always thought it was super cool. Yeah. Anyway, you're breaking up. I
stand by. I think you balance it better than you maybe give yourself credit for.
Okay.
At least you portray it that way.
Yeah.
Where it doesn't feel like you're Mr. Therapist guy all the time.
All the time. And
you have a good balance of, okay, I can step in and say these things and like bring in these tools.
Yeah.
But you also have like, at least as my dad, like there were plenty of times where you were just my dad.
Yeah. 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 And that could be hard. And I think that's a good way to say. And the reason I made the face was I would say, okay, let's get your mom in here and ask her how it's been. Because I think I'm having a nice moment right now when I said, oh yeah, I don't turn it off and it's no problem. But then when somebody just wants to feel heard or understood, let's say like a spouse, and I talk all day about, hey, don't try to fix your partner's problems, like just hear them. But then there is that part of me that's like, okay, I will, but I actually think I can help as well.
So it's like, I still think you're not turning it off, but you're able to like,
hopefully,
put it to the side for a second.
Yeah.
And be,
You know what's funny though? And I wonder if would you have the courage to be this vulnerable and say, yeah, you do this a lot, again, old man. But when you guys are telling stories or talking about certain people or friends, it is interesting because I want to interject constantly. Oh, that's immaturity. Or that's
when you don't do that.
Oh, I think okay.
Oh, I think I
do. Okay. So
not in a way that feels, I guess, then that you're just like,
yeah. Because I think that's my own way of wanting
everything and doing whatever.
And I think it's my own way of maybe a little bit of wanting validation, but also I did 10 years in a job I didn't really care about, and I like this one so much that there's a part of me that just thinks, okay, I do see that pattern in a relationship, and I do want to say it. So, great question. Okay.
How do you stop overthinking?
I thought I'd have a funny joke that would come out right now. Okay, take this one, Mac. You know this one, right? Yeah,
I'm not very good at this one.
Well, you've been working on it.
I've been working on it. I think just you have to wrap your head around the fact that sounds harsh, but that overthinking does not solve the problem. Yeah. And it's like your brain is, I feel like you have to practice it.
Yeah, a lot.
Like years and years and years. Like I've been practicing since I was 15 now at this point?
Yeah.
10 years. Still don't have it figured out.
What's the person's name? I want to look directly in the camera and be very powerful. Esperanza. That is a very good question though. Because here's where I think some of the origin of this is let's look at anxiety, for example. Anxiety initially was a very good thing for our ancestors because they were worried about saber-toothed tigers or turn in a corner and somebody robbing them. And so you start to anticipate or overthink a lot of different things, and it's a survival mechanism. But the problem is now we overthink so many things that are not going to happen. We're worried about just, again, if somebody thinks something about me, or if somebody took something a certain way, or what if even if I like my job now, but what if people stop coming, or what if I get, I don't know, banned for something, or what if, and if we just think about those things all the time, then it will cause us to then think about more things. And well, then should I be doing this, or maybe I shouldn't say this, or you know what I should do? I should probably start looking at something else as well. So when you start thinking, and then it moves into overthinking, then it's just part of that it'll ramp up your anxiety even more. So what Mackie's talking about is so good. You said the white polar bear thing. What was that? You said you thought I was going to say the white polar bear example?
You say this thing where you go, okay, don't think about a purple polar bear wearing a tutu standing on a skateboard.
What color was the tutu? I had it pink.
I kind of had it pink too.
Yeah. So Mackie's
and I guarantee everybody just thought of that.
Yeah. And if they didn't, they're super immature. No, I didn't. Yeah.
Nice try.
Right. So you can't not think about things. So even your question where you're saying, how do I stop overthinking? Your brain right there is saying, well, I will keep overthinking. So you have to change your relationship with your thoughts, which means I am noticing that I am thinking. And I even think if you're calling it overthinking, it's probably going to cause a little bit of a bump of anxiety. Mm-hmm. Because, oh my gosh, I'm doing that thing again. I'm overthinking. Okay, don't think about it.
The thoughts are going to come and go. It's just part of having a brain.
It is. And changing the relationship with your thought, and then know that none of your thoughts that you're having are crazy or wild, or they shouldn't be there, because you're thinking the way you're thinking because you are. And you're thinking the thoughts because you're the only version of you that's ever been on Earth. And you've had all of your experiences, which is, there's so many variables that go into everything. Mm-hmm. Like we say, we go to a movie and I'm thinking about a million different things about me or my experiences that then I see, and I think I like this, or I don't like this, or this reminds me of this. And because I get really scared easily. So even in that movie, Sinners, that we were talking about, there was still that part of me that I do not like to be scared. Mm-hmm. So in those moments, I wasn't even paying as much attention, because I'm thinking, okay, is it going to be now, or is the director going to do the thing where when you least expect it, or is it when you most expect it, or when you? So I'm overthinking. I didn't
feel any of that.
Didn't you really?
So it's like that, yeah. Oh. So it's so different.
Yeah, it was crazy. So let me give you a very short homework assignment, Esperanza, and that is, the best tool you can start to use is mindfulness meditation, and it's not. Here's the biggest key. It's not about trying to stop your thoughts, and I think that's the number one. Wrong answer. I'm trying to not be so dramatic. But that's the misconception about mindfulness, is that people will say, well, I can't stop my thoughts.
Clear your head.
Yeah, that is not what you do, right?
Not at all.
Yeah, what do you do?
Well, I remember in the Headspace app, which is a mindfulness app, there's little videos, and one of the videos they show you is to take thinking like this and view it like every thought is a cloud in the sky. Yeah. And you're just laying on your back and you're looking up at the sky, and the clouds are just going by slowly. But they're not nothing's getting bigger or smaller or heavier. It's like they're just going by, and you can look at it and you can watch it go by. And nothing has to change. No. Nothing has to cause you to spiral or go crazy. It's just hey, look at that. There it goes.
And what's good about that example is I like that one as well, because, and you might even notice that some of the clouds are getting a little bit darker, and that might cause you to notice that you are feeling a little bit more worried about, is there going to be rain? But then you come back to noticing the shape of the cloud, or the size of the cloud, or the darkness of the cloud, and now all of a sudden I am noticing that I am feeling rain. And then at some point, the cloud's still moving though, and then it's still it doesn't have to take over. Yeah, and so that's a great example. There's another one called Leaves on a Stream, and you can do this for 30 seconds. You can do it for a minute. You can try to get it up to 5 minutes, and all you have to do is just sit back and just notice thoughts. And you might be thinking, even, this sounds ridiculous, and take this sounds ridiculous and just put that on a leaf and watch it go down the stream. And then all of a sudden you'll think, this is really silly. And then you think, put that one on a leaf and watch it go down the stream. And you are practicing it is a thought. You're noticing that thought. And if you can even do it better, but now I'm going to get thinking about the Disney movie Pocahontas, then you can even watch as it goes around the river bend.
Oh boy.
I know.
You start singing.
I am in my head, and don't tell me not to, because I'll do it even more. Okay, so moral of the story, what an adorable concept to try to stop overthinking, but I can notice that I'm thinking, and then I can now learn to change my relationship with my thoughts. Okay, what do you got?
Somebody called me Maggie.
Maggie?
Yeah.
Do you like that?
No.
Do you remember a Walking Dead where Maggie is she still around on The Walking Dead?
As far as I know, I never finished it, but yeah.
Okay.
Whatever season I'm in, she's still there.
Okay.
How can you be completely honest in a relationship?
Ooh. Well, okay.
And side note, someone said, now I know what my girlfriend feels like when I talk about psychology. Bless her soul.
Okay. Meaning that it's awesome, right?
She's so lucky. It's so fun.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, completely honest in a relationship, though.
Right out of the gate, I want to know, we have a psychological, philosophical discussion on should one be 100% honest?
Should one be 100% honest?
Is that the goal?
I would say yeah.
Okay.
Is that not right?
Well, this is like I say, this is
in terms of what?
Well, that's the big question.
Oh.
So if every single, it kind of goes back to, if every single thought that goes through my head, then I think that I need to share with somebody.
Oh no, I don't think like that.
Yeah.
But I think don't sit there and blatantly lie about things.
I mean, I think
be
that's
open. But no, I don't think you have to go. I don't think you have to write down every thought you have in a day and be like, here you go.
Well, because I've had people that have done that. They said, look, I'm just being honest. This is
It's
what
like,
I was
again,
thinking.
It goes to the thoughts come and go, and it doesn't mean there's truth behind them, and it doesn't mean,
Yeah, well, and that one also, well, and here's one too, where let's say that somebody's just thinking about something. Here's one that I had recently in a session where a person came to me and they said, man, I've been thinking about, my partner's sibling in a certain way. And then they said, I mean, I guess I should let my partner know that. Your thoughts?
Well, part of me goes, maybe don't, but then part of me goes, yeah, tell them so they can get rid of you.
Okay, but what? Okay,
that feels scary.
Well, that's what's interesting. That's why
so
this
now
one
I don't
is,
know.
Well, because if that person, if it's just a thought, and now they feel guilty about their thought.
Oh well, yeah. Okay, so it's so complicated. Because if it's just a thought
is.
that was a second and it passes through, and it's like,
Well, now if they start thinking, man, I shouldn't be thinking that.
I guess is the.
Well, and that's where I think, and then I go back to, can you go talk to a therapist about it, or maybe even a friend about it? Because here's where it gets a little bit fascinating. Is then if it is just a thought, and now let's go back to that one earlier where I'm trying to stop thinking that, and now that means I'm even thinking it more, and now it's starting to cause me anxiety. And now if I want to now share that with my partner, is that just a way for me to alleviate my anxiety or my discomfort? And it even goes back to this thing we were talking about earlier with emotional immaturity, that I just say, hey, I don't like the way I feel, so I need you to manage my emotions. Mm-hmm. I need you to tell me that it's okay that I'm thinking this, versus I need to know it's okay that I'm thinking this, because that doesn't mean that I'm going to do anything about it. Your thoughts. See, it's fascinating though, right?
It's fascinating, but then it's fun. Then like my emotional immaturity is coming in, because then I'm like, if my boyfriend was thinking certain things, I'd be like, you have to tell me that.
Okay.
Yeah. But not really.
Because are your thoughts always just...
No.
Okay, that's I love this question.
So that's why I just said it's my emotional immaturity, where I'm like, you have to tell me everything, It's like,
but
no,
but I'm not going to, because mine's different. It's different for me, but you need to let me know. So it's like,
that's not how it works.
So this is where the beginning of this, I know, and I've thought before about, okay, and I'm not some math guy or anything, but earlier I talked about helping a client have a 90% solid, 10% flexible sense of self, meaning that what if when people are saying, I think you know what you need to do, or you need to change this, if 90% of me is saying, well, I'm actually good, but I'm leaving 10% open because I want to be the best me. So yeah, I want to hear what you have to say.
A little bit open.
Yeah, because, I hadn't thought about that. So in this scenario, I've often thought, all right, what would it be? 95% open and honest, 90% open and honest, 10% is a me thing. But I do, and this is where I go back to what I love about my job, is it is nice when somebody does say, okay, I just want to unload some thoughts. Because sometimes they mean things, and other times they are just thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So great question. That was fun.
Tricky.
Yep.
Tips on how to handle the father-in-law that wants to be called a grandpa, but he doesn't make a lot of effort to be a grandpa. Oh,
that's such a good question, too. Because my initial thought there is, and I love the way you phrased the question, because that person, first of all, do they even know how to be a good grandpa? Do they not know what they don't know? And so your expectation of them as a grandpa is, I'm not saying it's too high, but are we on different pages here? Or is that guy subconsciously or consciously aware that he's not being a very good grandpa? But as long as you tell him that he is, then he's like, okay, cool. I don't have to do anything else.
So it's like, does he think he's doing a good job, or does he know?
And this gets into, maybe this is the theme of tonight, is this a little bit of that emotional immaturity, which I'm saying we're all emotionally immature if anybody's just joining. But if there's a way that I think he should be, but I haven't communicated to that would fall back into that magical thinking. Because he wouldn't know.
So it's like, has there been a conversation?
Yeah. Because if you're saying, hey, I really think it would be good if you spent more time with your grandson, and he's like, oh, totally, I'm just so busy, or this or that or whatever. But then when you put him on the phone, or hey, make sure you tell him that your grandpa loves you, or that sort of thing, then I can see where that would be frustrating. So have you communicated what your, I don't know if expectations are the right word, but maybe, of what you would like his role as a grandpa to be? That would be the question.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it like you're
that's
doing
the starting.
it wrong.
No, but it's like that would be the starting point.
Yeah.
But then if those conversations have already been had,
there you go.
And he's still not showing up the way that he has, I think then you're allowed to have your boundaries and and whatever that means for like you and your kids.
Yeah.
And I think that I know not everyone feels that way, but just because somebody is family and related to you does not mean that you owe them anything.
No,
really.
It
like,
really,
just because I know people feel very differently about that, but just because somebody is blood related to you, it doesn't mean that you just have to like roll over and do whatever, you know?
Yeah, I'm with you there, and we are blood related.
We are.
But if you are feeling like you're, you too. I'm kidding. But if you feel like you're compromising your values or your own sense of self, or
like that's not.
Yeah, just
and then
because
that's not respect from their side, and like there's so many other things to that.
Yeah.
So it's like So I think complicated question depends on.
But a good one.
The things, but.
Because if you don't communicate, your
so you have to give them a chance to.
Because if you're secretly resenting them because they're not doing the things that you think they should do, it goes back to that's little magical thinking. Isn't that wild? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But and if there's follow-up questions to that, feel free to because I could love this one. Okay.
Difference of bipolar and just anger issues.
That is a great question. Because there, if we look at the diagnostic criteria of bipolar, let's just look at like a DX of bipolar disorder. Okay. Bipolar disorder, diagnosed based on the presence of specific mood episodes, including mania, hypomania, or depression, and then the absence of other potential causes. And I think there's the key, because if I am just going through this depressive episode or this manic episode, but there really aren't necessarily these mitigating circumstances or triggers or that sort of thing, then I think we would be looking more at a bipolar diagnosis. But if somebody is angry, one of the first things I want to do is say, okay, let's take a look at why you're angry.
But if it is just like anger issues, there typically is a trigger. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
And what's fascinating, now we get into that whole world of primary and secondary emotions. So if I am, let's say that I'm not happy with where I am in life, and then I continue to have these anger outbursts, then is it really a secondary emotion? The primary emotion I'm feeling is embarrassment or I'm frustrated with myself. So now I'm lashing out with anger, because if I can lash out with anger and get you to go, geez, or whatever, then now we can make it about our relationship and not about how I feel or what I'm doing. So that's one where then I think that you can look at if it's a secondary emotion, then is it more about anger is actually there to tell me something about myself? It's just hard to really understand that.
Yeah.
If you're that kind of anger. Anger as a primary emotion is a fascinating one. That's usually more around like I can't think of a better phrase than just injustice. So if somebody is treating you wrong, then you're gonna have an anger response, and that is, thank you, body, for looking out for me. But most likely when you were a kid, when you got angry, somebody's telling you, hey, calm down, bud, or it's not a big deal, or don't worry about it, or just get over it. So it goes back to that thing where have we been taught that our emotions are wrong to begin with? So then I feel bad if I'm getting angry. So then it comes out in other ways. So that's what I would look at more. But true bipolar is, you got these 3-4 day long manic episodes where people, I had a guy buy a house down in Southern California one time on a business trip because he just stopped by a neighborhood that he thought was pretty cool, manic episode. Then a few days later realizes, oh, that's a non-refundable deposit. His wife is not very happy. Yeah.
That'll
do it. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's a Venn diagram type of thing, but they are very like.
I think that, but I would look at what's the trigger for the anger. Yeah. Have you ever felt just like days of mania? Everything's great and you can fly and solve all the world's problems. I know.
Can't say that I have.
Me neither. So I do like this. I like saying that you can't really, not that you can't help somebody with something that you haven't experienced, or you can't lead someone where you haven't been before. But I do often say with something like bipolar, then I can help with the diagnostic criteria. We can go over examples, but that's one that I haven't experienced, so it can be a little difficult to help.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been angry though.
Same.
Yeah.
I think this was back with when we were talking about being honest in a relationship, and someone said, and being rudely honest is not nice, or direct is not nice.
Yeah.
So again, it's like,
yeah, because that's where somebody hides
still
behind.
being honest, but there are ways to be kind.
Yeah, because if somebody says, well, I don't like this thing, look, I'm just being honest, I think, oh no, you're kind of being a jerk, and you're just like basically diffusing your anger or frustration.
And trying to justify it and make it.
And saying, look, I'm telling you, I'm just being real.
Yeah, and so it's like that,
What's wild about that though?
To it.
Well, and I think you and I have talked about this before, or if somebody says that, and if you just say, oh, okay, thank you, but then if they're like, well, what are you going to say about it?
Like,
nothing.
Thanks.
Yeah, and it is funny when you kind of show up that way.
Yeah. Okay, this is from the person that said their girlfriend has to listen to them talk.
Okay, I want to hear more about this.
No, but this one I'm curious, because I'm sure you know. What comes first, the thought, behavior, or the feeling?
Oh, I mean, so this gets into that whole, like cognitive behavioral therapy says, just change your thought. It leads to a different emotion, and that emotion leads to a behavior. Again, I was a cognitive behavioral therapist for a decade, and then I learned acceptance and commitment therapy, which is just, I am thinking, I am feeling, and so check that out.
There is no
order
in that sense?
It gets to be the little bit of chicken and the egg kind of thing, or in the world of addiction, when I work in there, we often talk about there's a trigger that then does bring up a thought, and then there's typically an action that follows. So then you're trying to see if you can address the triggers. Like a trigger, often with like addiction or turning down healthy coping mechanisms, there's an acronym I like: HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. There's one that's BLAST. I like that one too because it adds B, which is bored. So if you are bored, and that's when you then typically turn to some unhealthy coping mechanism, then the work to do is to try to figure out the boredom. But if you have the feeling of boredom, then that can often lead to the thought of, well, I could always turn to unhealthy coping mechanism and then the behavior. But then there are also times where somebody's doing a behavior, and then that leads to the thought of, oh, this reminds me of this, and I feel this way. So
it really is a chicken and egg thing.
Yeah. So, and what I like about this is sometimes, my experience as a therapist is sometimes people do, I appreciate like they want to know maybe the order, but I would just kind of want to understand more about why that is important. Because if it's just like, I'm just curious, or if
it's like a specific scenario.
Yeah. And that's why I default back to acceptance and commitment therapy. Is every single moment of your life is the first time you've ever been you in that situation. And it is a unique combination of your nature, nurture, birth order, DNA abandonment, hopes, fears, rejections. So then you are going to think something or feel something, or when you are behaving a certain way, it can follow.
Okay, Riddle Nerd is here.
Riddle Nerd. I looked up Riddle Nerd's account a little while ago, and I think Riddle Nerd is a serious, like, very smart person. I think I think Riddle Nerd knows like space, engineers and stuff. So Riddle Nerd, it's always good to see you.
He said that's how I bought a motorcycle outside of my budget. I hated that thing. I'm guessing that's back to mania stuff.
Yeah, a little manic episode. I can see that. Mania plus money equals frustration.
You give me too much credit.
Oh, no, Riddle Nerd. I think you. Now I got you in my mind. After that, whenever when you're here, it's like, okay, I think you're designing like spaceships and things like that.
We're just gonna leave it at that.
Okay.
Believe that. Okay, this person, don't know these names. Jumped off real fast. Did you guys answer the one about Grandpa? We did, and basically to sum it up, we said...
we did a good one on that one. So this will go up on YouTube at some point.
Yeah, so you can go back and see it, but just to kind of speed run it, we basically just said you have to start from the part of, have you communicated any of those thoughts, right? Like, have you let the grandpa know that you're feeling that way, or that he's not showing up in the way that you want him to, because you do have to give him the opportunity to show up and to correct those things. But if you've already communicated those things, and it should just be like common sense at this point of how he should show up.
And we're not talking about the magical thinking kind of common sense. Like,
no,
well, everybody
like actually
knows this.
Like just be a decent human common sense. Then you are allowed to have any boundary that you need to have in that scenario. And then we got into a little thing talking about how just because somebody is related to you doesn't mean that you owe them anything or have to
compromise your values or
just because they're family, and you are allowed to protect your values, protect your family, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. And I'm glad
it was our speed run version.
It was, but please go find this video when it goes up on YouTube in a few days, Virtual Couch YouTube channel, because we went in depth there, because I like so many things. We talked about the magical thinking of somebody should just know, but then you also have to give somebody maybe a chance. Well, okay, and we didn't talk about this. So here's what I've also noticed. The more that I talk to people about emotional immaturity is, let's just say, and I don't know that this is what you're saying, person that asked this question, but if you're saying,
okay, cool, no, not yet.
Okay,
I will.
Okay, so even if it's like, okay, you know what, they should just know. Well, oftentimes I will now even say, well, you know, what would it look like? How would you know that this person is, let's say, being a good grandpa? And then I would say in a lot of situations, or it's happened a lot I'm a couples therapist. So when somebody says, man, I just don't like the way that they did that, they should know, and all those things, then I'll say, okay, well, how would you feel seen or safe or heard right now? And often the person, if they're being honest, of saying, I don't know, he should know. And then I say, okay, now we're into the world of magical thinking. And then that's where we need some good old vulnerability of saying, okay, you know what, this is what I would think that the role of a grandpa looks like, or this is how I'm assuming that a husband would show up right now. And then, but then that person can't be immature and say, that's ridiculous. Why would you think that way? They need to go in with curiosity and say, okay, yeah, tell me about that, or help me understand. Or because if not, we're into this poor emotional boundaries, or what I call emotional reasoning, where again, if I feel it, it must be true. That's the immature version. So with an adult, it's like, okay, I feel abandoned, so therefore you're abandoning me. So at that point, then the person is they feel bad, they feel like something's off, but now they're saying, I don't really know even what it is, but I need you to make me feel better about it. So start dancing. And then if you don't do it right, then they get to say, gosh, you don't really care about me. And internally, they might even think, am I unlovable? And the whole thing is like, or, hey, I don't even really know how I feel right now, but let's kind of talk about it. Does that make sense?
It does. And so it's just like, there are conversations that can be had there.
Yeah.
But that doesn't just justify someone not showing up the way that
you think that they should
want them to for the sake of your kids, or like something like that.
I like what you said though. The word it's okay to want certain things in a relationship, but you need to be able to communicate that.
Yeah.
Hey, I would love it if you took your grandson to breakfast every other Saturday
whatever
morning.
That looks like. It's like you're allowed to communicate those things.
Yeah.
But then if you have communicated, have given the chance, and they continually don't show up in that sense.
Yeah.
Then it's a different answer.
Yeah. Tell me if you ever had this. What I see a lot also as a couples therapist, or maybe somebody that is saying, no, I want to be there for you. You just tell me whatever you need me to do, I'll do it. And there's two things going on that are a challenge here. Number one, is it saying, okay, I put the burden back on you. No, you just need to tell me what I need to do. Because then if I do it, then I get to say, okay, check the box. Now aren't you super happy? Where's my trophy? But then what I often find is that person will say, okay, it might be like, I don't know, maybe you can mow the backyard more. But they literally just had to pull it out of their back pocket. And then, the person will often say things like, I mean, I don't know, you know how my back is, like that doesn't really, but anything else you need me to do, I'll do it. So there's just so many layers of immaturity there.
And they say they're so busy, but it feels like they're always too busy.
Oh, yeah.
And so again, that's a thing where I would argue they need to make the time.
Yeah.
They need to make the time there, and that's not a valid excuse all the time.
No, it's not. Because I would imagine to this person that they're so busy, except for when they're not. And then when they do the things that they want to do.
They're prioritizing other things. And again, that's not how you want someone to show up.
Yeah. There's so many. This is why I love the concept around emotional immaturity, because I would imagine you've had conversations with them where they've told you something about and then we just laid around all day, wasn't even sure. And then maybe later you're saying, hey, why didn't you make it to their t-ball game? They're like, oh man, I've had so much going on. And that's where it takes a lot of courage to say something about, hey, so tell me more about these times where you feel like you don't have a lot going on, or what would need to happen for you to be able to go to the t-ball game, or that sort of, because you almost want the guy to just say, look, I don't like t-ball, because then it's like, okay, you think we do too? I mean, this is what you do if you want.
Up,
exactly.
Show that you care.
Yeah. To be fair, I did enjoy coaching t-ball. Yeah.
I didn't play t-ball because I was a girl.
Oh, you could have, Mac.
Let me.
Oh, no, don't start.
I don't know that. thoughts on the, I don't know how to say his name,
Freudian.
Freudian
Yeah.
hate. I believe it to be revisionist history, harmful to say.
That's an interesting concept. So Freudian hate, I think what they're going to is now we're throwing Sigmund Freud, under the proverbial
that
bus.
guy.
Yeah, because a lot of his theories, maybe they don't hold up as well.
Okay.
But here was a guy that we didn't even talk about psychology. Yes, granted, the joke about he's the father of psychodynamic theory, which is everything kind of resorts back to your parents. Tell me about your mom. But as a practicing therapist, I went into this whole thing saying, yeah, what does Freud know? And then fast forward a decade, and it kind of is about your mom and your dad. Actually, on this Emotionally Immature podcast I talked about why we typically go toward the familiar in relationships. Freud's version of it was, hey, you marry your same-sex parent, the traits of them, so that then you can, or your opposite-sex parent, so repetition compulsion, and then you are trying to heal your own wounds with your parent, with your spouse. So sometimes people are saying, I didn't marry my mom. And that's kind of gross, but so I've been calling it more of the familiar.
Isn't that a thing though? Don't people say that all the time?
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
Guys always try to date their mom.
Yeah, because they're trying to work through those.
That's totally a thing.
So that's a Freud thing, and then it's I actually just had it listen to my last podcast. I put it on the virtual couch and on Waking Up to Narcissism on Emotional Immaturity, and I have a whole section in there of it. It is the familiar. So if you might have married somebody who you are continually looking for their validation. And it's because, let's say that your mom was overwhelmed. She had a lot of kids, or she was depressed, or her husband was maybe not the most present. And so then she was going through a lot. And this is actually like the basis of anxious attachment theory, is where when you needed validation from your mom, who was your primary caregiver, she was busy. So she would kind of, hey, not now. But then when she needed to feel like a good mom, then she's saying, oh, come give your mom a hug. So then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I guess. So then you think to yourself, all I want is for somebody to really pay attention to me, but you don't know what that feels like. So then you get in relationships with people that you try to perform to get them to pay attention, because that's the familiar. And so then when, then all of a sudden when they turn their attention toward you, then it's uncomfortable. So that's like some good old Freud stuff. So he had a lot of stuff right. Also had some stuff that's interesting. But I like what they're saying.
Yeah,
a little revisionist
history.
Something. He was onto something. Yeah.
Riddle Nerd said, my sister is marrying someone very similar to me. I'm kind of weirded out by it.
Okay.
So what is that good or bad for Riddle Nerd?
Okay.
Should he be flattered or offended?
Oh, that is really fun. I mean, Riddle Nerd, we'll just call it the familiar. Because it would be familiar if something is complete. And this is what's fascinating. This is why I say that we get into relationships and we're pretty much codependent and enmeshed out of the gate, is because we want the familiar. We want it to be comfortable. And that's why we even compromise our own sense of self and say, no, I love this movie too, or I love these things too, even if we kind of don't, because we think that we need to be perfectly aligned in everything. But then the whole thing about becoming differentiated is the more you go through life and have experiences, you realize, oh, we're two completely different human beings. And now that we're having kids, or we are having big kid jobs, and we have to deal with money and finances, now all the stuff that you dealt with in your growing up comes in here, and there's expectations. Well, everybody knows this, or you just think that you're going to be on the same page, and meanwhile you start compromising who you are because you think it's just supposed to be super easy. Did you tune in?
I'm following, but Riddle Nerd said, well, she was very mean growing up, and he feels bad for the guy. And then said, thankfully she's learned to be an adult, but she definitely wears the pants in that relationship.
Okay, there we go. So there would be the familiar, right? Is that she's finding someone that feels like what a relationship is. Because if, let's say that there was somebody that then, even in a kind way, stood up to her or stood up for themselves, then it's going to feel really uncomfortable for her. And that would make sense, where she's probably going to write that guy off because it's so different or uncomfortable. And that's sometimes where our immaturity comes in a little bit, where then we assume, and this one's another, it's mind reading. Children assume others see the world exactly as they do. So adults with this pattern make assumptions about their partner's intentions without checking, and then they feel hurt when unstated expectations aren't met. So that's where we're assuming that everybody thinks the way we do, and so they need to validate her for the things that she does. And if people in the family have, I want to say enabled it, but I worry that enabling sounds like such a judgmental word. But it is, if she got away with it in her home, then it works for her, right?
So why would she not continue that?
Yeah, she doesn't know what she doesn't know. Okay, we're probably close to the hour, right? So the puzzle piece will come. We won't hit it. So we will probably disappear in a minute or two, and we won't even know it. And we'll probably keep talking. So anything, speed round, anything else there?
Back to grandpa. How can a grandpa love his grandkids but not play with them at all?
Yeah. I have a hard time with this one because I've got a grandkid and I do like playing with him. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's a couple of things here. See, this is where I'm going to over-therapize this for a moment. And this is where I do give people the benefit of the doubt. They don't know what they don't know. The hard part is that a grandpa is probably, by the time he's that old, going to have a hard time with some good old self-confrontation. So if he thinks he's a good grandpa, I would really want to understand what his thoughts or expectations about what a grandpa does is.
Right, so it's like I really think there's something. It sucks, but there's more communication that has to be had there because you can't rule out that he's...
Thinks he's doing well.
Yeah, and that there's potential for him to end up being good. But you won't know until those conversations are...
But okay, you and I were on a walk a couple days ago, and we were talking about, but at some point, is there almost like a limit for someone's ability to self-confront, change, that sort of thing? Because it would really take him to be able to be okay with the discomfort.
Right. And he'd have to do some work. And, sit with that discomfort. And
because it's really not as scary as people think for maybe a grandpa to kind of say, oh, okay, I don't know why I don't spend more time with my grandkid, but I want to be viewed as a good grandpa.
So what would I ask him?
Oh, so what would I ask him? It's a great question. I mean, it really... Okay, no, it still is a great question. I realized I was doing a little bit of the pause. Watch the thing end right now. But it really is hey, tell me about your grandpa. You know, what did your grandpa do with you? Because a lot of times people will reminisce, or they'll either say, oh, we didn't do much of anything. Well, then it's like, oh, well, there's your model. And so that would maybe be a good, easier conversation. Yeah. Or if they say my grandpa did all these things with me, I could also see as him wanting to say, so therefore I have to be that type of grandpa. But then they don't want to think that they're not doing the things, and then I call them yeah buts, where then they can but I'm busy, but. So then you could even be curious and say, hey, what would you need in order to spend more time with the kid? And then if it's like, well, I'm busy, I'm this, I'm that, it's like, oh, totally, I totally hear you. But you want to be a good grandpa. I would love for you to have a better relationship with their grandson. So what would it take for you to be able to clear time? And that could be hard. I have had a couple of people do a little bit of family therapy, which is tricky because if you said, hey, Dad, or can you come into therapy so we can talk about something? So that one might be a little bit too much. Okay.
Advice for new therapists. Best resources to assist with learning to diagnose.
Oh, I think about this a lot, and I get this question a lot. It's when you're a new therapist, you currently just often feel like you need to just know these things. But even diagnosis, a lot of the ways that people show up are going to come with getting reps in the couch, I like to say, or reps in the chair. So give yourself a lot of grace, and it's going to be bumpy. And if you most likely you probably have a clinical supervisor that's there to look over your paperwork or help with the diagnosis. And so this is where I don't want to say I wish I would have been more vulnerable, but you don't know what you don't know, and the people that you're working with hopefully do. And so don't be afraid to ask them for help. And if they say, well, you need to figure it out, or you should just know, I'm going to call their emotional immaturity out on that one, because if you don't know, then that's what they're there for, is to help you understand more, because you can't really understand a lot of the nuances of behavior and things that lead up to a diagnosis until you've seen a lot of reps. You start to know what, I use the word normal looks like, but a little bit more of, this is a pattern, this kind of thing. Yeah. So give yourself grace and ask for help. And if somebody doesn't want to help you, then they're kind of a weenie. That's a diagnosis. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Should we wrap it up?
Yeah, it's going to end any second.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much. Go watch the podcast, Wake Up to Narcissism, Virtual Couch. When are we going to do another one of yours? The Mind, the Mirror, and Me.
It's been like a year.
It would. And that's all we have to say. So, do you want to go turn it off on someone?
Yeah, you can just sit there and stare.
Stare like, duh. I'm frozen. That's a little creepy right there. I don't think I can pull that off. Bye, everybody.
It's what it's all about.